Welcome everyone to another episode of Lost in Translation. I am Bobby Martin, along with my partner in crime and brother from another mother, Sam Perkins. Sam, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. As you can see, we are not in the brand new studios we just opened up. You maybe tell from the backdrop, we're in one of the most historic colleges in the country, one of the most storied, historically basketball programs in the country at the College of Holy Cross. I think I'm saying that correctly.
That's right.
I know they get very particular about that. Came on a recruiting visit here like 20-something years ago and had to make sure I got that one right. But we are here with a pretty impressive coach. Bob, you want to do the honors of the introduction?
I certainly will. It's taken me a while because there's an extensive resume, but here's what I've got. So everyone, I want you to understand that we've got basketball royalty in here today. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a true titan of college basketball to the podcast. With nearly 3 decades of coaching experience, our guest has left an indelible mark on the game at every level. From Division III to Division I, his teams have consistently excelled on the court, in the classroom, and in the development of young men who go on to achieve greatness, both in basketball and in life. He's the 19th head coach of the storied history of the Holy Cross men's basketball team. Currently in his 2nd season leading the Crusaders, but his journey to Worcester includes stops at some of the most respected programs in the country. He's a 3-time Patriot League Coach of the Year, a 2-time Division III National Coach of the Year, and the architect of the 2008 NCAA Division III National Championship at Williams College. He also led teams to multiple NCAA tournament appearances, NIT berths, and conference championships at Bucknell and George Mason, where he became synonymous with player development, mentoring future professional athletes and award-winning players. Beyond the wins and accolades, he's a leader who prioritizes academic excellence, as evidenced by his team's 3.2 GPA.
3.37.
3.37 GPA last spring at Holy Cross, where his student athletes earned spots on the Patriot League academic honor roll. His ability to build programs, develop talent, and inspire his players is a testament to his dedication to the game and the young men and his coaching staff. Please join me in welcoming the head coach of Holy Cross Crusaders, a man with over 500 career wins, a passion for history, and a relentless drive to elevate the programs he leads. Coach Dave Paulsen.
Awesome. Thank you.
That is the most intense intro we have ever had on
Dude,
the
I was
podcast.
ready for this. I was hyped.
I want you to intro me like that.
Well, I'm going to be honest. When I heard I was doing a podcast with Bobby Martin and Sam Perkins, I thought we were getting the Sam
Big
Perkins who
Smooth, I
played
know.
in Carolina. So you can imagine my surprise when I met you in the lobby. But it's all good because I remember watching Bobby play.
I heard that my whole life growing up. Big Smooth, because when I was a kid, he was still in the NBA. So that was, I didn't quite get that height.
Not quite.
So, Coach, thank you so much for having us today. Is this year 2 or 3 for you?
Year 2.
Year 2.
Yep.
Just what would you say overall about your first 2 years? It's a rebuilding program. It's a incredibly storied historical program, but the college landscape has changed so much. I feel like the Patriot League is one of the, and maybe I'm wrong, but hardest leagues in Division I to really get competitive because of the academic rigors. You don't get pulls with admissions like a lot of other places. I may be wrong, but I don't believe you guys can just give a red shirt to a freshman without injury. Like, it needs to be injury related. So you can't get that extra year to develop. You can't recruit JUCO kids the same, like the way that they can in other conferences. So your teams, just by those kind of dynamics, you have to recruit a lot of 4-year players, are like younger and not as physically mature, and you guys don't have the same kind of NIL as some other places. So what's it been like for 2 years, the first 2 years for you?
Well, I think everything you said is 100% accurate. But I also think we have a lot of things here that other schools can't dream of having. You guys walk through, you're looking at our conference room and our basketball complex, our practice facility, the renovated Hart Center Arena. And we've got an alumni base that's passionate about basketball and passionate about helping, our players. I was talking with Bobby before we came on air. We have a mentoring program that's the athletic department wide called the 90 Wide program. Every guy on our team is paired with 3 former men's basketball players as a mentor for career exploration, guidance. And we really just believe that it's a 40-year recruiting process, not a 4-year. And I think when there's enough guys out there, there's enough really good players out there, there's enough parents and families who understand that all that glitters is not gold and are looking for a substance situation. And I think that's what we found. Now, it's true, we're going to build through the draft, if you will, rather than free agency. And so we're a very young team. We are the youngest team in the Patriot League. I think the last Ken Pom thing I looked at, we were like 298 out of 365 in Division I experience. Earlier in the season, we were starting 3 freshmen, got off to a phenomenal start. One of the freshmen, a point guard, Tyler Boston, sustained a fracture to his foot. He's out for the season. We've had a number of other injuries that have kind of lost some of our momentum, and yet this is an unbelievably fun group to coach. They're working their rear ends off. They're coachable. They're relentless. We have 1 senior in our rotation. Everyone else in our rotation is in their first or second year of college basketball. So I think the future's bright, but we want the immediate future, starting tomorrow night, to be bright as well.
Right. Well, Coach, you've had an amazing career. What initially drew you to basketball, and has your philosophy on basketball changed over the years?
Well, initially, I remember I was 10 years old, and it was 1974. So, fortunately, tell my age. Okay, I came home from a youth basketball game in the morning. And I remember we'd always go to the high school camps and do your ball handling drills. So we had a basement. I'm doing ball handling drills. And I'm watching, and it's Notre Dame playing UCLA. That was back when there was one game a week, on TV. And Notre Dame knocked off UCLA to break UCLA's 88-game win streak. John Wooden was the coach at UCLA. Digger Phelps was at Notre Dame. It was probably one of the few times, they actually had cameras in the locker room talking Digger Phelps. And I was like, I want to be a college basketball coach. I was 10 years old. I knew I wasn't going to be a great player, but I wanted to be a college basketball coach. And so that has always been the case. And I always read and studied as much as I could. How we play on the court has evolved and changed as the game has evolved. You always have to, I think, try to stay current. But I think the values of the game, those are the things that resonate across generations, about discipline and accountability and being unselfish and being coachable and being a great teammate, and all those things I think are transferable values that when our guys graduate will help them have a success after graduation. And I think at the end of the day, the most rewarding part of my job is seeing young players develop on the court, off the court, grow in maturity, and then staying in touch with them as they get older and start their professional careers and start their own families and things like that. That's really at the crux of why I do what I do.
Quick question: What was because I'm going somewhere? What was the highest level you got to as a player?
Division III.
Division. I mean, one. I think it's nothing to scoff at. I think that a lot of kids in this day and age, an awful lot of them, will be like, "Oh, I'm going D1 or nothing," or like if a kid that from their high school makes it to D3, they like Scott was just D3, and it's like that's still the top 1% of high school players in the country. Like it's only 1% of them are playing. But you're coaching at the Division I level. You've coached at the high Division I level, and how often does it work against you guys playing at a higher level, being like, yeah, well, you didn't play at my, like, how much do you have to overcome that? And the reason I ask that is, so I remember this quote, and you'll excuse me for crossing sports, but like Mickey Mantle, all-time great hitter in baseball, it was first All-Star game, Ted Williams came over, arguably like the most sort of scientific hitter ever, and he's talking to him about everything. Mickey Mantle went into a horrific slump after the All-Star game. And he's like, I couldn't, I was just thinking about everything, I couldn't do it. I remember my own playing career in the minor league level, like, you encounter some real all-time great players that teams bring in as their, like, maybe hitting coach or like just like spring training liaison. And so often the like greats, the just physical greats, are not great teachers because they could just naturally do stuff that nobody else could do. And so I don't think not being an NBA guy or not being a Division I guy is a hindrance, because often you had to really maximize your ability to get where you are and really understand the game at a far deeper level. But I'm wondering, for how long when you got to the Division I level, did that work against you in the eyes of some players that like, yeah, well, you didn't play at this level?
You know, I don't know for sure. I don't think it did. I mean, I think number one, as you said, you could be a great coach having never played the game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You could be one of the absolute best players to ever play the game and be an awful coach. And there's probably more examples of that.
Yeah.
You know, for that same reason that what do you mean you don't understand this, right? I was a great player. I could make that read and transition. And so I think, you know, I think it's can you help? I think the biggest thing for players is, are you legitimately and genuinely concerned about my best interests, and can you help me get better? And if the answer to those two questions are yes, then most of them are going to give you trust, okay? Because, you know, it's really interesting. You know, we may diagram a play out of timeout, and our guys will leave the bench and they'll forget everything I said.
Right.
And that happens routinely. But they will always remember if you BS them. They'll always remember if you have a double standard. They'll always remember any shred of hypocrisy or inconsistency. Like kids know what we all know when we're being played and we're not being treated honestly.
Yep.
And so I think that's the most important thing, is, do you legitimately care about me? Can you help me get better? Is what we're doing on the court, is it sound? You know, do you hold everyone accountable, or do you have double standards for better players? And I think that's the most important thing. And you know, I do think it helps. It's great if you have all those and you were an ex-player. You know, so Bryson Johnson, my associate head coach, was a phenomenal player for me at Bucknell, was a great leader. And it's important for me as a head coach to have guys who, you know, are better suited than I am to get on the court and demonstrate and sweat equity. But again, when I hire former players, the first thing I tell them is, nobody cares at all about your playing career unless you can use that to help them get better. Right. So you often see the guy, when I was a player, we did this. When I was kids don't want to hear about it. And again, you know, now kids' version of history is, you know, the last TikTok they saw. So it's not like they, you know, really know where a guy played. They just want to know, can you help me get better, and can you help our team get better?
No, it's interesting. You mentioned that. I remember taking on that same type of philosophy when my son was coming out of high school. Now, you know, he had to actually deal with me, you know, being a McDonald's All-American, and, you know, he wasn't, but he happened to be a better player because he had a better coach as a father.
Right.
You know, or a father who happened to be able to coach him. And, you know, he went on to have a wonderful career. You know, right now he's in the Navy doing naval intelligence, but, you know, he's going on with his life, graduated from Rice University. And it's amazing how, you know, when you're trying to speak to young minds, how, you know, we understand as veterans that there are different levels to this, you know, and, you know, whatever level you reach is the one you reach, but can you do the best you can at reaching that level?
Right.
That's what it's all about. Now, a question I've got for you is that you've had the experience of dealing with some really, really great coaches in your life. I believe Steve Fisher was one of them.
Yes.
So, you know, when you get a chance to learn from guys like him, what type of lessons do you take from him? And have you kept, you know, who are those coaches that inspired you?
Well, you know, certainly Steve Fisher. And the thing I would say about Steve Fisher when I was with him at University of Michigan, he's one of the most genuine, sincere human beings I've ever met. And he would, if you ran into him on the street and say, I know Dave Paulsen, he would sit and it doesn't matter, and he would have and then probably somebody, his assistant coach or his wife, who have to drag him along. Come on, we got to get going, Steve. But that's who he was, and so more than anything, that was, they just won the national championship, and Coach Glenn Rice and Ramil Robinson and Sean Higgins and Terry Mills and all those guys, soon thereafter, recruited the Fab Five but you can be just a really good human being. You can really care about the guys that you're coaching and still coach at the highest level.
Right.
So like I just, when he retired, I remember sending him a note like, I hope I can have half the impact on just people that he has had, and I think unbelievable humility. I played at Williams College. I wasn't a good player in Division III. My coach at Williams College, Harry Sheehy, was a phenomenal coach. And at Williams, which is a really, really academic school, but in the month of January, they have something called winter study. You take one class, it's pass-fail. You can explore something that you have an interest in. You can propose your own course. I did a study in coaching basketball with Harry Shee, put together a 80-page portfolio, went scouting with him, went recruiting with him, watched film, and asked these types of, why do we do this? And as I kind of worked my way up the ladder, and this was before cell phones, something like that, but it was once or twice a week in the morning, call and just...
Now, was this payphone?
Well, it was the office phone. I don't even have an office phone now. But and just talk about, his team, my team, what he's doing, what I'm doing, why, I've got this situation with this player or things like that, just role playing. And so I would say, again, what we do on the court is different than how he played on the court. The game's changed, but a lot of my philosophy, it comes from him as much as anyone. And then I think you learn from the guys you coach against, right? And like, wow, I like that. Like I can't watch a game without a pad of paper, and I like what this team did or that team did, and can we tweak this and use it? And usually I've got 100 ideas, and then you say, okay, what are the 2 that we can use?
I ask a variation of this question whenever I get a chance. I feel like all of us, we have these sort of seminal moments in our lives. It could be on the court or field, or it could be, but that they sort of make us the person we become. I don't want to be cliche and say a crossroads and you could go left or right, but when you think back in your career or your life even, are there any moments that stand out to you that you're like, that was a big moment in me becoming the coach or becoming the person I am today?
I think there's a lot of those, right? One stands up, well, there's a number that stand out. I'll think of one. It was my second year at Bucknell as a head coach, and the first year was a long year. It was a similar, type of situation. The second year, we were starting 3 freshmen. Bryson Johnson was one of them. Mike Muscala, who ended up having a long NBA career. Joe Willman, was a really good player for us. But we were young, we were erratic, we were inconsistent. And we played a game at Dartmouth. And it was like a 7-hour bus ride up there. And we probably lost 50-48. I mean, it set the game of basketball back.
Classic Dartmouth basketball.
25, 30 years. And now we're on the bus ride back. And, I want to jump off a bridge. And it's just like one of those nights. And 2 things happen. I'm watching the film and I'm like, look at that, that's a good shot. Look at that, that's a good shot. Look at that, that's a good shot. I think this guy's got to make it. And my assistant coach, Eric Kelly, who now is a head coach at Catholic University, goes, well, maybe it's not a good shot for our guys, coach. Yeah. And I told him to get off the bus, but no. And I'm like, he's right.
Yeah.
He's right. I'm trying to run something that worked for the group that coached Joe Williams to a national championship. And we came in and we tweaked how we did things and really went to a ball screen motion offense, whereas before we were running more of the kind of old school motion offense, right? The other thing that came out of that was I hated the way our guys responded at that game. And I just said, I don't know if we're going to win any more games, but we're never going to hang our head, drop our shoulders, make excuses. And we came up with the pillars, like the core values, which have become the pillars for me, that we emphasize every single day. And I think from then on, every decision in recruiting, every evaluative tool with our players, how are you holding up on a scale of 1 to 10 based on our pillars, on our core values. And that's the most important thing. We practiced. The next day we came to practice getting subbed out of a game. And you just hit 3 in a row, you don't think you should be subbed out. What happens? A guy dives on the floor for a loose ball, everyone rushes to go pick him up. Immediate huddles. And that was really, really important for me. The other one I would say is, the quote-unquote worst thing that can happen to you as a coach is get fired. And I got fired. A new president came in at George Mason, and I was mad. We had Tyler Kolek, who was a rookie of the year in the league. We had Jordan Miller, who was a sophomore, with Josh Adur. We had 3 guys who are now on NBA teams. I'm like, this was a team that was going to go to multiple NCAA tournaments, in my opinion. But it was young. And I was bitter. And, a lot of friends in this coaching community would call, check in. And I remember once saying, Dave, you got a choice to make. Do you want to be bitter or you want to get better from the experience? And it was the same thing. I was pissed at him at the time, and I'm like, but he's right. And I really had to do a lot of soul searching. What do I want to do? Do I want to transition to something else? And I said, you know what? I love to coach. And I love to watch guys develop individually as a team. And I love coaching at a school like Holy Cross. It fits me, where the academic and the athletic are really, really important. And so it crystallized everything. I'm not saying, my guys that I coach now would not say I'm patient, but the guys who I coached previously say, I've gotten so soft, I've changed so much, because I do think I've got a better perspective. Like, at the end of the day, we're not solving world hunger. Right? And we want to be the best team we can be. We want to develop as much as we possibly can. But I think I'm enjoying just the daily experience of trying to see a team and players grow because of that experience, like kind of crystallize, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And I every day I walk into this office, I got to pinch myself because I get to do what I love. I get to wear sweats every day to work. I get to do what I love with a great group of guys, and it's a blessing.
So you just mentioned something that I think that most of, and I'm saying this because I'm thinking about recruiting right now. I know we touched on it earlier, but they say the game has changed, and I do believe the game has changed. I don't believe that the responsibilities that we have in the game have changed, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So you're dealing with young men who for most of their young lives, they've looked at this game as an individual sport where you give yourself to a team dynamic, and I think that's fair. Because you have to learn how to give yourself. What's the saying? Don't be a reservoir, be a river.
Okay.
Right? So the kids now come in and they have to learn how to give more than they may be receiving at that particular moment. Because this is a team atmosphere. And I'm interested to know, I have a lot of respect for Division III players because I think they work their butts off. Now, when I was in school, D3, they were still cleaning their own uniforms. I'm sure that's not the case anymore. But it may be in some schools.
To some degree, yes.
But, the level of work, the work ethic that they put in, I've always respected. We had a guy, now this wasn't D3, but we had walk-ons at Pitt. And Pat Cavanaugh and Scott Colombo were 2 of our guys, and our coach, Coach Evans, loved those guys. And their work ethic was unbelievable. I mean, these guys gave it to you every day, and they're not on scholarship. They eventually earn scholarships, but the level of work and effort they put in made us as guys who were, on scholarship just stand there in awe. How do you go from transitioning from, that coming from a D3 school, you've gone through it personally, being fired, and I believe your words were be bitter or be better?
Yes.
Somewhere around there. How often do you have to remember that when you're looking at a young kid that doesn't seem to get it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just, again, that's one of the things, and sometimes, listen, sometimes, like, I'm direct with guys, right? And sometimes you gotta raise your voice. Like, there's no doubt about it. But I think more now, I think when you can talk to a guy now, not in the middle of practice, but the next day, and say, okay, this is what happened. Like, is this legitimate? Like, is this an appropriate response from you? Because these guys are highly intelligent, and I think if you've recruited good people at their core, then they're going to be willing to reflect a little bit and say no. And I'm like, okay, well, we all screw up. How do we move forward? Like, what's the path? And again, I think if guys know how much you care first, then they'll be willing to care how much you know, right? But they have to know how much you care first. And I think, again, they may not agree, but I'm far more patient with these guys. And I think the other thing is, development's on a spectrum. So physical development, skill development, emotional development, and so are you moving in the right direction, right? Are you moving? Is this guy moving in the right direction? And when they don't, you got to correct it, but then you got to also celebrate, the small victories with them. And then I think being able to reflect with them, are you moving in the right direction? Are you a better player now than you were last year? Are you doing better in school? Are you able to withstand hard coaching better? Are you able to practice longer? Are you in a better place? And like with our team, we had 2 consecutive losses by 1 possession where we had a chance to tie the game at the buzzer, and we lost both of those games. And we just said, like, we're doing more things right than we were 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Okay, now we got to do a few more right. Okay, we can't dig ourselves a 12-point deficit to scratch a claw back. But both things can be true. Hey, we don't want any moral victories, and yet you are getting better. You individually, as a team, can we sustain that? Just the other day, we had our most complete wire-to-wire performance with a level of intensity and attention to detail. Now, hopefully, the goal is, can we now extend that to the next game, right? When they're feeling down, it's kind of the instinct as a coach to yell at a guy when he doesn't have success. I think when they don't have success is when they need more encouragement. And then when they have success, that's when you got to make sure we keep them grounded and kind of put a foot up their rear end, so to speak. Not literally. And that's the balance in coaching.
Yeah, it's a tough balance. I used to tell my son, this was when you make a great play and you start pounding your chest. And I said, look, man, act like you've been here before. What are you doing?
Absolutely. We had a game where this year where we had 2 good baskets, and the guys got to give the 2 small, and we gave up a transition basket the other. Now 10 years ago, I would have lost my mind. But now we just watched it, and hopefully we're not going to see too much more of that too small.
Funny incident. I can't say I'm not guilty of it. I remember an incident in college where we're playing. You see players that you love to watch. So I used to love to watch Syracuse, and Derek Coleman would catch a lob and he'd throw his arm up in the air and after dunking the ball, bringing attention to himself. So I did it one day. I caught a lob. Sean threw me a lob or something, and I caught it. And I've got my fist up while I'm running down the court, and the guy's running by me. And Coach Evans is screaming at me. And of course, this is my freshman year. And he's, I can't say what he said to me, but he was like, man, if you don't get back on defense. So I get what the players are feeling, but it's got to be tough trying to reel them in.
Celebrate when the game's over.
Yeah, when the game's over.
And you got the win.
Yeah.
You said something when you were talking, and it's stuck in my mind when you were talking about the moment sort of on the bus coming back and looking at the game film and going, those are good shots. Your assistant saying, well, maybe they're not good shots for our guys, and that you then rewrote the playbook for that year, going away from the system that you were using and inventing a new one. I think that's such a huge thing. So many coaches will not do that, and when you're at the mid-major, the low-major level, you have to be able to do that because you can't just recruit 13 scholarship players or however many scholarship players it's going to be when the dust settles on this, at this level, that are all good enough physically to be Division I players and smart enough to be able to grasp a complex scheme. If they were, they'd be at a higher, you'll get some guys who hit some home runs, but you can't do that. And I think being able to modify your scheme is something that's so critical for all coaches, but especially low to mid-major coaches, just because you can't always get the personnel that are exact at that. I'm wondering, when you are recruiting, are you recruiting scheme first, find the players to meet the scheme, or are you looking for best players / kids out there and I will modify my scheme to them?
Best players. Best players and kids. And fits for me. Yeah. Like I'm looking, okay, they're going to fit for me in terms of I want gym rats. I want guys who are in the gym. While we're sitting up, different assistant coaches have been going in shooting with their guys already today during the day. I want gym rats who absolutely love to play and love to compete. And I love skill. And I want guys that at the end of the day, you got to be able to put the ball in the basket. And then obviously you want athleticism and size. But every year, and my guys, there's guys who've been assistants for me, they'll laugh, but every once a week minimum in the summer and the fall and the preseason, I'll make them all come in here at the conference table, rank our players 1 to 15. And every day, we're ranking our players. And part of it is because I want to make sure everyone has an open mind. This guy we thought was going to be great, and this guy's outperforming him. And if you're outperforming him every single day, we're going to take a look at that. Yeah. But also, I want to craft, especially our offense, around the skills and abilities of our 3 or 4 best players. I think that to me is what I do. And there's a fine line with that, Sam, though, because I've changed offensive approaches a lot in my career. And I think when it's gone really well, I think that's been a real strength. That we're playing a little differently than we played at George Mason. We're playing differently than I played at Bucknell. Right. Even at Bucknell, we did 3 different offenses in the 7 years I was there because, we went to the ball screen offense, and then my last year we had a kid named Nana Fallon who was a great back-to-basket player. Not a great ball screen player, and we went more to a different kind of stagger, floppy action, post up. So I think that's good. The flip side of it is you want there to be value in being a veteran, so you don't want to change everything willy-nilly every year, because you want there to be some continuity of the experience of playing in the system. And so that's that fine line. Defensively, much less likely to change, many things, because at the end of the day, defense is about rules. And defense is about effort and attention to detail. Offense is more in the gray area, right? And so an offensive structure that allows your best players to be at their best, I think is what's important to craft.
What do you look for? So when you're recruiting, I know you kind of said the sort of skill sets and all that, but what are you watching when you go to see a kid? I mean, it's like, it's easy if a kid scores 50 points in a game against, but like, what are the little things? I think kids so often don't understand the things that can help them, the things that can hurt them when coaches come to see them. And what are you looking at when you go to a gym to see a specific player?
When I, so if I'm going to a gym to see a specific player, so he's probably already been vetted to some degree. One of the, my assistant coach who's got that recruiting area, maybe I've watched film on him. So if that's a guy that I'm going to see to really, all right, do we want to recruit this kid or not? I'm really watching, one, how's he interact with his coaches and his teammates? And what's he like in the huddles at the timeouts? And what's his body language like? And how's he receive coaching? Because everyone is going to hit some rough patches in college, unless we get the one and done guy, which I don't think is necessarily happening here. How do they handle adversity? So that's one that I look for. Certainly I'm looking for, okay, this guy scored a ton of points. Does his skill set necessarily translate to being able to have success? The 6'3" power driver in high school gets to the rim wherever he wants. Does he have something else in his game? And then I really like to find a guy who has a secondary skill that is really transferable, and so like when I was recruiting Tyler Kolek, and I remember the first time I went to go see him play, I knew he was a great shooter, right? It was the tradition of being like a great shooter, and I'd seen enough film. He played for Mike Crotty, who was my point guard at Williams. So great shooter coach. So the game I saw him, it was the night before we were playing Rhode Island on the road. He had a sprained ankle. Couldn't get any lift on his jump shot. But what I could see, he was an elite rebounder for his guard size, and he was just like unbelievable vision. Like, I don't think people realized that he was going to be a point guard. I think everyone thought he was going to be this scoring two guard. But I'm like, all right, there's a couple qualities that he brings to the table. On this year's team here at lacrosse, Max Green, he led the state of Kentucky in scoring as a senior in high school, and he's our leading scorer as a freshman. But he's an elite rebounder for his size. So that's another skill. So I just think when you have kind of a secondary skill, if it's a big guy, back to the basket guy, post moves, over both shoulders, can he rebound out of his area? Can he pass? Can he do something else? How physical is he?
Right.
All those things, and you just try to look at the broad swath of what that guy can do, and you're trying to project it out. But that's where the character piece comes in, because, all right, what's his work ethic? What's his coachability? What kind of teammate is he? Because everyone's a high school star, and if they come here and they're the 8th man or the 9th man, are they going to be legitimately and genuinely happy for their teammates' success when we win a game?
Yeah.
Or are they going to be jealous? And if they're jealous, we're going to have some real tough dynamics in our locker room. Yeah. And as much as I can, I want to eliminate all of that.
It's something I still haven't gotten over with the kids. It surprises me every time I see it. So there's obviously a mental block in my mind. I remember my freshman year at Pitt. I think I averaged a little bit over 11 minutes a game, and this is as a McDonald's All-American. I distinctly remember the guys telling me when I had the ball, I took a shot that I shouldn't have taken as a freshman. And they said, no, you're a swinger. You swing the ball from this side to the other. And man, oh man, that was a shock to my ego, right? Because, I had one, but, I'm playing behind an Olympian and a guy who led the country in rebounding for the last 2 years. So there was a chip that had to be flip to say, okay, well, you know what, it's time to learn again. And I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity, because it helped me as I got older, because I understood what the younger guys were thinking when they didn't have enough experience or enough perspective. So it's
Yeah.
got to be difficult for you to deal with all the time.
And Frank Martin, we were talking about Frank Martin before we got on here. And, Frank Martin's quote, which I think is so true, is the kids haven't changed, their parents have. So I think probably when you were coming up, when I was coming up, and maybe you would complain about the coach or your role, and it was much more of a mindset, hey, you got to pay your dues, you got to learn,
Exactly.
you fit in, find a way, your time will come.
Yep.
And I think the whole concept of your time will come and pay your dues is, I wouldn't say it's lost in our society, but it's harder to find, and that ability to see progress and see the need to kind of immerse yourself in the process, I think that's the trick.
Bobby and I have talked a lot about with some different coaches, and my feeling, and I think it's something that we've sort of heard, like Joe Jones said something to this extent, but parents really can't do much to get their kids to the next level as far as like politicking, talking to coach. They can do a lot by supporting them, by putting them in positions to succeed, by not burning them out, by fostering their love for whatever. Getting up early, taking religion, doing that sort of stuff. Obviously, great parents make all the difference. But a parent, when the rubber hits the road, the kids in high school, they're playing in these games, they're playing in AAU. A parent at these events is probably not going to be able to do anything to get a team to go, you know what? I was on the fence now, but yeah, you convinced me. But I feel like parents can do a lot to make coaches go, I don't want to deal with that headache. The kid's borderline, the kid's in the group of kids we're looking at, but I do not want to deal with that headache for 4 years.
100%. So what else I look at? I look at the parents. Without a doubt, I'm watching the parents. Now, if I think this kid's going to be the absolute best player in the league and play every minute of every game, am I willing to maybe deal with a parent? Maybe.
You're malleable.
But anything less than that, if you're even, I'd say even if it's 60-40 that you're going to recruit the kid. If it's 60-40 or 70-30, and just watching some of these parents, it's a real turnoff, and again, you don't have to be your son's agent, right? You can support and think your son is great, because as parents, we all think our kids are wonderful, right? But and let your kids struggle and quote unquote fail, because I think that's the instinct. And again, I'm a parent of 3 daughters who are all out of college now, but it was all you want as a parent is to make everything perfect for your kid. Well, we can't make it perfect for our kids, and when we try, probably make it harder on them in the long run anyway.
So things that I will remember, I lost my dad when I was in my late teens, but he was just a phenomenal dad. He played at UMass Amherst basketball, so he knew around athletics. He had Division I success, all that sort of stuff. But he, for me, is who I want to emulate. And my kids are young. I don't know if either of them are going to be athletes, but he told me what it took. He's like, you don't have my height. You're going to have to outwork everybody, but I can't do it for you. I'll match whatever effort you put into it, but I'm not going to be getting you up in the morning if you don't have it in you. I'm not going to be dragging you to the park. And in my games, baseball, football, he'd be out behind the fence by himself, away from everyone. Basketball, back of the bleachers. He didn't say a word to anybody, and that was his stance. Is like, this is on you, and I'm just here to watch from a distance. And those are the things I remember. I remember after one football game early on in high school, we were in the car ride back, and he was like, "Man, you really sucked out there. You better get it together." I think I was distracted by a girl or something. I don't know, some issue. But I just, no one's perfect, and I'm not someone of any esteem at this point in my life. I played in college. I played a little bit after college, but there are a million people that are better. But just for me, it made all the difference to have someone that supported me, but was not pushing me, was real with me, but was not like dragging me to these things, and who game time was not a distraction. Literally, unless you knew that he was my dad and where he was 6'7", but he made himself pretty invisible at those games. And I think it makes a big difference when parents can sort of not become the sideshow at games.
Yeah, parenting is the absolute best thing I've ever done, but it's also the hardest, right? And so there's no formula, but it is that fine line. If you're trying to give your son or daughter every possible advantage, but when you're driving the decisions rather than them, like you see how many kids now, they're burned out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? And like, well, you can't be burned out if it's internal love for the game. But if you were pushed into the game or whatever it is, the violin or whatever it is, like the great violinist, he or she, they love it. They're not because their parents are making them do stuff. Right. So learning how to be disciplined and showing that example of hard work, that's great as a parent. But when you're driving the car all the time, I think, I don't think it helps the kids.
Bobby said, it always sticks with me, he gave me this quote 15 years ago at this point when he was working with players, and we were talking about someone that, I was friends with, and Bobby was training, but he was like, you can't, and the kid had all the talent in the world, but Bobby said, I can't want it more than they do. They're not going to be a success if I want it more than they want it. So,
there is it's weird with the kids today, I would say this generation, because there's a dynamic that I don't believe that they understand. On one side, they have more opportunities with NIL than ever before.
More exposure too, man.
I'm
40. When I was coming out of high school in the early 2000s, like there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't Insta. Like you can get footage out there and be seen by anyone now. So, but anyways,
they've got that available to them, and at the same time, they're also being called the generation that needs the most help with mental health challenges and things like that. Now, as far as athletics is concerned, this is a world where the rules are as malleable as they are in the real world. If for a better way to explain it, I would challenge athletes today and say, you don't get to say that you need help here and not be willing to, what do they like to say, that you want that smoke? Well, if you want that smoke, there's fire. You don't get to back up off of this. If you can't handle it, that's another problem. We can help you with the psychology, and I think those coaches are great. But there's a philosophy to this game, right? A philosophy, the life that you have to have, right? Because philosophy will guide you. That could be your North Star. The psychology are the tools, right? That's what the coaches help you with, but they can't help you with your own philosophy. Coach, you had mentioned that when you had gotten fired, you said to yourself, I love this, right? It's that love for the game that says, I'm willing to go through hell and high water to get back in this, right? Of course you've got it. You're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. What is it? It wasn't fair. Nothing in this life is going to be fair for them. They will be disappointed. And it's just good to hear that, when you hear about coaches having had to go through those same instances, that the kids think they're the only ones who are going through this. No, I mean, the public service announcement is that everybody has to go through this. This is growth, right? And when you look at the people in front of you, when you hear, we like to say our elders, when our elders are speaking to us and trying to give us that type of advice, it's better to listen. It's better to try to understand than to always look to be understood.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's interesting, that quote right there that you just said, because again, hopefully I'm more patient than I used to be, but I would bring, even this year, a couple examples of somebody who in the moment did not respond to coaching in a game in an appropriate fashion.
Right.
Okay? And, let 24 hours go by and bring that person in and say, were you listening to understand or were you listening to explain? Like to give an excuse, like, all right, I'm trying to help you. Now, it's easier to be calmer and sedate when you're watching film with a kid at noon before a 4 o'clock practice than in the heat of the moment. You know, you've got to rotate over, or you've got to box out, or you've got to jump stop and pick the ball up strong so you don't get stripped. In the moment, you know, well, you either have to be able to hear it and it's loud, so I'm going to have to scream it out. And if you can't accept it, well, then I have to put somebody else in who can try to do it the right way. But that's just like, are you listening to understand, or are you listening to explain yourself? And I think all of us are guilty of doing that at times.
Yes.
We always have an explanation, and sometimes the explanation is, hey, I didn't do it well enough, and I gotta re-examine how I do it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, being back in the Patriot League after going to a higher level, what was it like last year, your first year back? You're coaching a different program, but you're playing in some of the same venues. You go play against Bucknell, where you had tremendous success. What was that like, sort of the first go-round back?
Well, it was, again, I coached at a higher level because I wanted to challenge myself, right? But I was never a guy who got caught up in the trappings of, it's a 10,000 seat arena or it's on national TV. I could give two hoots about that, right? Like the game, you know, the game is pure, you know, and where you're playing. And, you know, I will say, taking a bus for 6 hours after a game is a lot harder than jumping on a charter plane. I will say that. The charters were nice, okay? But more, the challenging part last year was inheriting a group that had not had success, and I would say, for the most part, was at least somewhat resistant to the culture we're trying to build, and it was a painful year because the level of buy-in was not what I wanted or expected or what we needed. And starting in the spring and the summer, the level of buy-in has been phenomenal with our guys. And that's what's fun, you know, and if you have the buy-in and everyone's going the same direction, well then you're gonna win or you're gonna lose based on just, okay, well, maybe that team played better than us today, or maybe we just, you know, we couldn't make a shot, or we executed great and we played great. But it's not about effort or buy-in. And that's what we want it to be. Like, it can't be about effort or attitude. It can be about execution, because execution is going to go up and down, and performance is going to go up and down. But if effort and attitude are good, you're going to give yourself a chance every game. So that was more the transition. Like, I'd forgotten how exhausting it is to rebuild a culture, because you have to, especially the first year or two, the head coach has to be like directly involved in every aspect of it, and that's exhausting. It's draining, you know. And then when it becomes a more player-led culture, it's less exhausting, and you can just go out and try to coach technique and execution as opposed to coaching effort and attitude.
I've got a question because I haven't brought it up yet, but I'm worried. I want to know about the rock behind you, your wife. Okay, she has put up with this for a long time.
A lot, yes, she has.
And how is she coming along with this? And you know, how has she been so helpful to you?
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked, because she's a saint. Okay.
Good start. Good start.
She's a saint, and she's put up with my crap for a long time. And unfortunately, in coaching, if you want to quote unquote move up, you got to move. You know, if you are in whatever, you come out of Holy Cross and you start working at Fidelity or whatever, you can move up, and maybe you're not moving. And then, of course, now even a lot of jobs, you can get a promotion, take another job, and you're working remotely. So, you know, the transition was hard. So when I was a coach at, so everywhere I worked, Kathy worked in career planning offices, and so I was at St. Lawrence, and she was in career planning there. I went to Lemoyne. She worked at Colgate in career planning. I went to Williams. She was actually working, helping faculty and staff, their spouses and their partners find jobs. And when I decided to take the plunge into Division I, and the travel is just so much more recruiting, and our girls were young, and so she gave up her career, and that was a tremendous sacrifice. And truthfully, it's now that our girls are growing up, there's some regret there, from her that why is it that it was your career that had to take primary obligation. So I think when you're in college, and again, I'm from a different generation, so I think now this next generation, the dual career and the juggling is more part of the deal, but it didn't even enter my mind, which is how obtuse I was. So when we moved to Holy Cross, it was the 18th house that we've been in since we were married. 8th that we've purchased, but you might rent a house and then buy a house and then rent, 2-3 months of temporary housing here. And so it's always fallen on her. It's not fair, It's challenging. Again, I would like to think, and she may disagree just like my players, but that I'm more in tune, I'm less, I think I work every bit as hard, and I think I'm every bit as focused, but I think I'm less obsessed, and hopefully try to make sure that, we have some quality time every day, but it's hard. This move, like Holy Cross, we love being back in New England. It's awesome, but we moved and our girls were grown up, and so a lot of times you get to meet your friends through your kids, through school, through the travel soccer team or whatever it might be. And so I go off to work in the morning, and she has to kind of re-engineer her life all over again, and that's a challenge.
Can we pause for 1 second and give a special shout out to St. Kathy?
There we go. Very good.
Job well done. Job well done.
Awesome.
Well, I'm wondering, since we're talking about moving and everything, what your thoughts are on Worcester. So I lived in Worcester. I think it has a certain rep, but I loved it. We had to move for some different reasons to get back in the area that we are now, in the Lowell area, but I loved the time that I spent in Worcester. I love Worcester. I think it's a great food scene, great, what are your thoughts on Worcester? I
have absolutely loved Worcester. I think one, there's really, really good people, and so everyone I met, and there's not a lot of BS.
Yeah, there's not at all.
I don't know, but people are not too worried about, trying to flaunt. If it's not like, okay, this person may have a whole bunch of money and this person may not have much money. There's no, my perception, there's no divide between people. People are genuine. They'll tell you exactly what they think of you, which I respect, good or bad. The food scene is stunning.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
So now that's a problem for me, okay? And when we first moved here, and we're going out to eat, okay, well, number one, I'm gonna be big as a house, and number two, I'm not gonna be able to afford our own house because we're going out to eat so much, right? And what's neat, I had a bunch of college buddies. They've been for 10 years now. They've been flying in, people from Atlanta and North Carolina and New York, and they come for one game. They spend the weekend, and what I told them, and we went to two different. You don't have the big chain restaurants, but you have the almost a hole in the wall, and the food is off the charts good. So I love that. In the summer, we love to go to the Woo Sox
I was gonna
games
say
when
the
we
Polo
can.
Park's great.
Like,
It's
you go on
great.
a
Yeah.
Friday
Yeah.
night and they got the fireworks and the other thing that I like is you can get anywhere.
Yeah.
Like the traffic is not, it's not like Boston
Yeah.
traffic. Like you get places. I've loved it.
I have a couple of spots that I still come out here for, even though it's like 45 minutes from Lowell. Like Luciano's in Union Station, I go to all the time.
I've never been there, so I've never heard of it.
It is so Luciano's.
It's Italian.
It's Italian. It's beautiful. So the parking garage in Union Station, you might see some interesting things when you park in there. But Luciano's is in the train station. The interior, I think it's like 80% of all the furniture in it is from one of the Godfather movies.
Really?
Yeah, it's like all set pieces from it. Food's great. It's still an inexpensive meal, which is great. It's beautiful inside. So Luciano's is a spot I go to. The Boulevard Diner, which still has some nights that it's open 24 hours, so you can go there like at like 2 in the morning. And
Never
get some
been
meat.
there.
Boulevard Diner is great. Miss Worcester Diner is really great.
I've been there.
Yep. Mare Monte is a really good Italian place.
Awesome.
Yep, that's fantastic. So like those are some places that I'll take my kids. My kids are 8 and 3. There was one day, so last winter, so they were 7 and 2, and they were just going crazy. And I'm like, when I put them in the car, we went to Coney Island Hot Dogs. We drove all the way down there just to get them hot dogs, which is it's a great place to go. You talk home. They've got a big giant old neon sign, but it's a fun spot to go to. And then Union Station, just like when COVID hit, we were living here. My oldest was 3 at the time. Everything shut down, library, schools, like his preschool. I didn't know what to do. He loved trains. We went to Union Station 5 days a week for like 8 hours a day and just watched the trains go by every day there at Union Station. So, because it was something to get his mind stimulated when like even parks were closed in the beginning of COVID. And it's like, what are you going to do with a 3-year-old when it's like,
what are we gonna
nothing
do?
to do?
Yeah.
And that was Union Station in Worcester. I feel like saved me as a parent because
How about that?
I didn't know what to do.
There we go.
Coach, this has been an absolutely incredible experience. We want to thank you for allowing us to come in here at the College of the Holy Cross and get a chance to get to know you and hear about your program. And we're really looking forward to continuing to follow the program and watch the great things you do with the club.
Awesome. Well, it's been a ton of fun
Thank
talking
you, Rich.
basketball, and we'll do it any other time.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.